Good morning and welcome to The Art of Composition. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. This is a supplemental video to the video lecture that I did yesterday. I was on the Hardocre street photography website because in the latest Magnum video by Martin Parr, I believe it's called his last workshop. He mentions the website Hardocre Street Photography, and I was on there yesterday looking at some of the photographs. There's so many of them. I pulled out a few that on first glance stood out to me, and I felt they were really strong compositions. So I have one of them on my screen, and I want to drop the 14-line grid on it just to see how elements line up. When I was going through my video yesterday, I didn't drop any grids on it. I just, on first glance, like I said, I selected the ones that just sort of popped out at me on the first round. And I'm not saying that the other ones weren't good. I'm not saying that at all. But I did pull a few that just really stood out to me and said, wow. Anyway, the first thing that I want to do, though, before I drop a grid on it, is I want to bring the image down to the size of a thumbnail. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to demonstrate that, generally speaking, to evaluate your photographs, if you bring it down to a very small size, like you see on my screen, you can still see how all the figures are separated clearly and the design still holds up. If you bring your image down to the size of a postage stamp or a thumbnail and everything blends together, chances are the design is not that strong. And it's a quick way to go through your photographs to select for your portfolio. But you can tell with this photograph, everything still holds true. You have your dominant horizontal lines here. You have one here and here. This is really the dominant one, but this is the second. This is subordinate. This is a strong horizontal line here. But you also have this repeating diagonal line of the airplane and the clouds, as well as the hand position here. So let me just bring this back up to normal size, and I'm going to drop the 14-line grid on it. And if you're new to my website, the reason I do this, it just helps me to learn a little bit about why I select the photographs that I do in my own work, but also when I'm evaluating others, when I do portfolio reviews, I want to demonstrate how you can use the armature, whether it's the dynamic symmetry armature or the 14-line grid, to just evaluate some of the photographs that you select. And you don't have to do it for all of them. You'll get a knack for what's a good photograph after doing this, so many times. But once in a while, I do like to drop a grid on it just to see how many elements line up. And of course, like I said, you can use I call it the dynamic symmetry armature, even though it's not really technically a dynamic symmetry rectangle, because most photographers today are shooting in 1.5, and that's what this photograph is. It's a 1.5. But when I drop this diagonal line here, you can tell it's picking up the angle in this figure here. And you're also getting this angle here in this figure as well. And this diagonal line encompasses and closes that figure there. So let me just draw the rest of the lines here. And you can do this on your own work if you choose to do so. It's a great way to learn how to select good photographs. And it's not just about that as well. It's also about improving your visual literacy skills so that when you're out photographing, you sort of become aware of it. You're not memorizing lines, but you do recognize in a fraction of a second what a good photograph is. And that's what Bresson talks about a lot when he's talking about the decisive moment. So it's just something to mention. And I won't spend a lot of time on this today. I'm going to be creating a series of 1.5 grids in the 14-line armature, so you don't have to do this each time. But I do have a 14-line grid pack for other sized rectangles on my website under dynamic symmetry grids. But when I drop these remaining lines, you can tell I'm getting the angle in this man's thigh there. It's picking up this angle here in the foot there. But I can also drop a horizontal line here where this series of diagonal lines intersects, and it gives me this bottom horizontal line where the sand meets the water there. But I'm also getting this figure when I drop a vertical here where these two diagonal lines meet. So wherever you have a diagonal line intersect another diagonal line, you can drop a horizontal and vertical line. And it's interesting, I was online the other day and I was looking at a video by Ian Roberts, and somebody wrote in stating that they don't use armatures, they just like to use horizontal and vertical lines. And that's fine, but you have to understand that those horizontal and vertical lines are derived from the armature. So you really can't get around using the armature. I wasn't fully understanding that comment, but I understand sort of what they were saying, but it really doesn't make any sense because all those horizontal and vertical lines in a master painting are derived from an armature. So just something to think about. But you can see a few elements lock into place. I can also drop another horizontal line here where this series of diagonal lines intersects, and it gives me this horizontal line there. And then I have another one with the plane wings right here. Sorry, it's right here. And you can look at how the diagonal lines are being played out. And the reason I'm doing this today is to show how some of the visual elements line up with the grid, and it just makes it a stronger composition. Not everything has to line up. That's not my point today, but the more elements that you have that line up, the stronger your composition is going to be. But that's going to be it for today. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it, as always.